Do you want to move your life forward in the most positive way using astrology? Then let's talk about the astrological patterns for May 2022. May is a very different energy than we had in April. April was mushy, it was flowing, it was soft, it was very Neptunian and Piscean, and it felt soupy and it felt a little fuzzy. But there was a lot of healing that also happened in April. But now as we segue into May, we have some planetary changes that are going to express energy outward instead of the primarily inward energy that was happening in April. First, we have Venus entering Aries early in the month on May 2nd, and immediately that is much more extroverted. It's very socially flirtatious and outward. Then we have Jupiter also entering Aries on May 10th. And Mercury goes retrograde that same day. So let's talk about this. First, Jupiter entering Aries is a big shift in energy. It goes into Aries and it's going to stay in Aries for several months, but it will retrograde back into Pisces to make one last sweep later this year. But we get to enjoy several months of Jupiter in Aries, which again is very extroverted, it's very dynamic, it's very self-sufficient, and it's very courageous and pioneering. You're going to feel that shift of energy, and it's going to feel like the sunshine has just come out after having a very foggy period. Be ready. On that same day that Jupiter enters Aries, Mercury going into the retrograde phase, it starts off Mercury retrograde in Gemini, which is a very strong place for Mercury, but then Mercury is going to move back into Taurus, and it's going to retrograde in the last 4 degrees of Taurus when we get later in the month. Mercury goes direct on June 3rd, but it'll still be in Taurus at that time. Now, this is what's important about this Mercury retrograde. Go back and remember what may have been developed in your life last November of 2021. We had an important eclipse at that time in Taurus. Mercury's going to retrograde and hit those same degrees. So if you had important development or important decisions or movement in your life, you may find it goes to the next phase during this Mercury retrograde. Either way, this is a time when you get to process and reorganize. It's a very productive time, especially because the retrograde begins in Gemini, where Mercury has such incredible strength. The big news for May is a very powerful eclipse that takes place on May 16th. This is a full moon in Scorpio. And this is the mirror image of what happened in November when we had the eclipse in late Taurus. Now we get to have an eclipse in late Scorpio. So if you have planets in Taurus or Scorpio in the late degrees, you're going to be very affected by this eclipse. And during this time, we get to look at the shadow level of Scorpio, and we get to decide to take it to the higher level instead. These eclipses in Scorpio always bring up the shadow potential, which can be holding grudges, it can be jealousy, it can be vengeful. It's nasty stuff in the shadow side. But the positive side in a Scorpio eclipse is to choose to rise above. It's the eagle that soars above the problems and lands on the high branch to observe. That eclipse on May 16th is full of passion and intensity. Make a choice to take it to the higher level. We're going to have that Mercury retrograde in late Taurus at that time. It's just downright juicy, but it also is saying release control, surrender to the highest good of all concerned. For that full moon eclipse on May 16th, direct your energy to something specific, like the thought, divine right action for the highest good of all concerned. But release what that outcome is and let the divine flow through. That's using Scorpio at the highest level. Late in the month, we're also going to have Mars entering Aries, and that's on May 24th. So you see, this flow is oriented to outward expression and all that courageous energy of Aries. So to summarize the astrological patterns for May, it is an outward energy instead of so much emotional, sensitive energy. We begin with Venus entering Aries on May 2nd, followed by Jupiter entering Aries on May 10th, and Mercury going into retrograde motion on May 10th, starting off in Gemini, moving back into Taurus. May 16th, that super powerful and awesome eclipse in late Scorpio, and then followed by Mars entering Aries on May 24th. Very different energies, very different flavor in the air. It's like sunshine after a foggy day. What are you going to do with all of this dynamic energy? It's time to move forward. I'm blessing you and sending you good thoughts. Thank you. I'm Kathy Rose.